Welcome back to Marketing People Love and part 2 of our conversation with Melissa Rosenthal, Chief Creative Officer for ClickUp. Previously, she shared what has been her North Star with the brand and how she thinks about disruption in marketing. So now let's dig into what inspires her and what she would have to say to someone who might be like you, looking to do something disruptive with your marketing without a Super Bowl budget.
This episode is brought to you by Brand Pop. Do you want to craft a compelling brand voice that is consistent and breaks through the noise? Then Brand Pop is for you. Brand Pop takes users through a self-guided online workshop filled with incredible animated explainer videos and interactive modules that allow you to answer key questions like, how do I want to make my customers feel? And what sets my brand apart from the rest? Head over to mybrandpop.com and use the code MPL20 to save an additional 20%. That's mybrandpop.com, code MPL20.
I want to change gears here and ask you a very high level question. You have been with BuzzFeed, Cheddar, ClickUp. So basically you're an astronaut. I didn't realize that you went all the way back to BuzzFeed. Unbelievable. What keeps you inspired? Like, what are you looking to? And that can be literal inspiration from day to day or just other brands that are inspiring you right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always been inspired by disruption. And I think it definitely goes back to being a bit naive, and I think at BuzzFeed, like that being my first job out of college and not knowing kind of what you're up against in terms of what the, like the ability to change or really like change an industry or change a model or a way of thinking. Going into that blind was very, very helpful for me because I never came up against that kind of bias in my own mind where it was like, well, it doesn't operate this way, or the industry won't buy this because this isn't a real product, or you can't invent something new. And I mean, obviously that's every founder ever like going up against a tide, but it was very similar. And I think that was very inspiring as it started to happen. And really like once I started to understand like how media had operated for such a long period of time, how advertising had operated, and then like kind of riding the backs of other waves of change and other social platforms that began to become popular during that time, and just seeing the world change and the world shift and media consumption habits shift, that was like so inspiring because it just felt like, wow, like, oh, what we're doing is working and we're actually disrupting. And same thing at Cheddar, like that was also like, I've always just been fueled by disruption, and that's what brought me to ClickUp. I love the product. It was disruptive in its own way. It was disrupting, the legacy software that was like super structured and rigid and opinionated, where you had to like use multiple tools to do something. And I as a marketer in my career had dealt with that too. So it was really like that ability to disrupt again in a completely different sector that was super inspiring for me. And it continues to be that way because it's such a fast-paced, highly competitive market, that we're always kind of on our toes rather, and like trying to disrupt and consistently disrupt with every single thing that we do, and knowing that it makes an impact. And that's what fuels me and keeps me inspired every day. It's the idea of disruption. That's why I don't work at, General Mills, because,
shots fired at General Mills. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It's just that I need that fast-paced ability to disrupt, and the idea that things can change, and being around people that also believe in that and have an optimistic viewpoint on the fact that if something isn't done well, like we can change that, and we can create a real business out of it, and we can emotionally connect with people and do something differently, whether it be our marketing or a product. So that's what keeps me inspired and has kept me inspired my whole career.
I love that. Well, I mean, basically you don't know anything but disruption. In fact, I'm curious how you're going to disrupt this Thursday afternoon. I'm like, it sounds like that's all you know.
So many plans for disruption.
Oh my gosh. This is more of a, I probably won't ask many other guests this, but I'm going to be asking you this. I notice, I follow you on a mix of LinkedIn and Twitter, and I noticed that, much like myself, you are like constantly thinking about marketing, right? Like, maybe you just present yourself that way, but I honestly, I'm like, okay, this is somebody who like when it's 9 o'clock at night is probably on social media or something, and just thinking about marketing, if that makes sense. I'm curious, what, like, in the more structured space, whether it be books or authors or people you follow, where are you gleaning inspiration and interest in that realm? I'm very curious, like, where you're seeing some of the more academic side of branding and marketing, and where you feel like you're learning.
I mean, I think I learn, for me, I mean, there's been books along the way, but the way that I really learn is in practice, and then seeing others execute, and kind of based on what I'm seeing in market. That's always like the most inspirational. And I love to see things, and kind of everything is a collection in my head of things that I've seen or interacted with, or, I guess read in books or read in white papers, but it's all that kind of collection that then will come out as like, hey, this is how I'm thinking about this, or this, or this, or this is how this can work. But it's like less academic and more like in practice, I think is where I get my inspiration from, and where I, that's kind of the heart of like how I think about it. It's like, oh, like, do I sit up thinking about marketing? No, I think about like emotional connection and how to reach people. And then I see different things that inspire me along the way. And that's sort of how I form my opinions on that.
Totally. I mean, I guess in my mind, the idea of formulating ways to connect with people is marketing. So I think
is marketing. I just it's marketing has become like very technical, which is, I mean, especially in our space, is needed, because
sure,
you need that. It's a machine, it becomes a machine. You're spending that much money. But at the end of the day, there is like a huge lever, which is the creative lever that you can pull. So sort of separating out the actual, like, technical side of marketing from the creative side of marketing, and kind of marrying those two things.
Totally. Like, I'm not necessarily up at night thinking about my CAC and my LTVs crossed with my
other people are doing that.
Yeah. I'm like, you're
like thinking about it. Just
yeah.
I'm thinking about like, how do we reach people?
We don't know each other well, but we, have come into contact here and there. What kind of questions would you have, or what question would you have for me when it comes to marketing people love?
Well, I guess what are you seeing? What are some trends that you're seeing that you can say, wow, this is like a pretty disruptive either form of marketing, or something that we're going to see in the future that will disrupt the way that traditional marketing is done, or marketing is done now?
Yeah, well, what I've noticed is just a complete splintering of attention. That in what's happening on the internet is much like what happened with the TV stations, where it went from 5 TV stations to 1,000 TV stations. And then it wasn't just 1,000, it was like, now there's new platforms. And so there's not like one centralized place where all your friends are anymore. That there used to be like Facebook or Instagram, or even at one point, like when Snapchat, it's like there was one place, but now it's like that is gone. The days of being in one place is gone. And so,
except your work, I just have
to. Yeah. And so, the way that I start thinking about things is, I'm like, okay, our job is going to be more and more. I mean, our job is always to be in the places where people are, with a message that can resonate. And the thing is that the places that they are far more fractured than ever before, which is why I think the Super Bowl, and I think out of home marketing is like so valuable at some point, because you're like, everyone has to get in a car, you know what I mean? Like 100 million people watch this thing, but it's like, what we're getting more and more into is thinking about holistically as a campaign, how can we create long form video for YouTube that can convert? How are we creating format for Reels and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, where it's not an ad, but it's content that someone actually wants to watch? And then, oh, by the way, there's some mentions of the brand in there, but it's like, first and foremost, it's entertainment. We call it edutainment, but it's like, we're thinking about everything through the lens of like, how do we get someone to genuinely want to consume this content on all these different platforms with one centralized theme? And reminds me of the rap song that you all came out with, where it was like, honestly, okay, I'm not gonna lie, as soon as I saw you guys had a rap song, I was like, oh no, like, not another brand that's gonna have some cheesy ass rap song. And then I clicked on it and I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, a brand actually did it. They just made a good song and it wasn't cheesy. And I was like, I forget who posted it, but like I'm like, my God, like someone made a non-cheesy rap song that like is actually good. So you all are living this, but that's really where I see the future continuing to evolve into. Obviously, more and more people mixing with creators, but also brands creating content that people actually enjoy consuming.
Yeah, I mean that's such a great statement and point and observation. And like I think that's also been the catalyst of a lot of like the companies that I've been a part of, like just on the media part of that, right? Like, and I've seen that. But yeah, I mean it's reaching where people where they are. It's taking bets on different mediums because, you know, like that's the reality. Like, you know, a lot of people are not on one platform. So if you take that platform out of the mix, they're not going to, you know, what third of people are not going to see you there at all, right?
Yep.
Which, yeah, to your point, is why both brand awareness and then the understanding of like platform specific marketing is so important, because it really is like, how do you reach them where they are? How do you reach them with that message, like where they are, where they're expecting that? Yeah, it's definitely like, you know, it'll be interesting to see the evolution of that. As you know, is there a capacity for attention span where like there's a point of kind of no return? You know, I mean, there definitely, I would say, within the past couple of years, I think everyone thought that they could build the next social network,
Yep.
because everyone, but I think the realization of like people actually have like a specific amount of time and that they can spend here.
Yep.
And now you have like, you're competing with streaming services and social platforms. And, you know, I think we definitely hit like a threshold of like, well, you know, no one's building the next great social network outside of a TikTok, which is a different story. But you know, you don't see new social networks popping up every day that have millions and millions of people join. And the reality is because people are just taxed. So yeah, I think it's kind of like we've been seeing that, but I wonder if that will continue, if it'll continue to be as fractured, or if it will kind of, the fracture will stabilize before there's a new wave of what, you know, I guess, you know, the metaverse will look like.
Yeah, my prediction is pretty straightforward. It's and I could be totally wrong, but you know, I think about the future a lot. Did you watch Game of Thrones by chance?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because to me, this whole thing's like Game of Thrones, where it's like, it was interesting. The storyline took this thing where it starts small and then it becomes almost like watching, if you were to shoot a shotgun, all the pellets like fly out, but then over time it all starts to come back together.
Yeah.
And so to your point, I could see there being a social media version of ClickUp, meaning someone that just goes, okay, like I'm gonna create something new, but it's gonna be one place where everyone wants to be. I could see it happening, and I don't know exactly. I think the only way to maybe potentially trigger that is, you know, this like web 3.0 technology where I can make money simply by being on the app because I'm getting a piece of whatever's being advertised to me. I mean, we both know how much money is going to the middleman. I'm like, yeah, I'd join a social network if I was making, you know, 500, $1,000 a month just to be advertised to, and everything I buy, I get a slice of. Like, yeah, of course. And so I could definitely see that being the catalyst for people to be like, yeah, I'll join something because there's something so clear in it for me, and then building the experience on top of that. But that's the only Kingslayer I can think of. Otherwise, I'm like, this thing is just getting crazier. It's really, to your point, it's at a critical mass of time and energy. So last question for you.
Sure.
You know, a big goal of this podcast is just to inspire marketers, brand architects, brand strategists. And so what would be your advice to any like hungry marketers and entrepreneurs out there who are, you know, looking to maybe in this case with your specialty, thinking about like, man, I want to do something disruptive. Like, what's your advice to
Yeah,
those?
I mean, you don't need to have a Super Bowl budget to be disruptive. I think there's a lot of opportunities and they all exist all over. And, you know, I'll point to something like very specific that we did where we saw our competitor, a $100 billion market cap company, come after us at their conference and, you know, even like name our slogan and reference our billboard on stage. And we just, you know, like I had to take that opportunity to create like a funny remix of it. And it wasn't, we did it over the course of an hour and a half. You know, we ripped the video and we just remixed it with some funny images of our billboards and effectively turned it into our own ad. And I think taking opportunities and taking risks like that are kind of the keys to standing out. Everyone can build a marketing campaign and, you know, life cycle marketing campaign, but I think it's taking small risks and bets to make you stand out, where it comes off as like sparring, competitive sparring.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing that for a little bit, and I think when you do it in a smart way, it can really help you stand out. So I think in terms of being disruptive, like, look around, because things are happening all the time that allow you to be disruptive. And it's like, how can you think about the world in that capacity? It's like, what can I disrupt today, right? If I'm planning for a conference, like, what would be a disruptive experience at that conference? We had, you know, one of our staffers, like, we had a big button at a conference, and anytime someone would come near the button, you know, we'd circle them and then we'd make them step on the button, and then we'd wrap our pitch.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, it's like, it's just, how do you, and I think it's more just like, how do you disrupt like what is not normal? And then how do you make people feel a specific way, whether it's, you know, they're humor, you know, they're laughing because of it, or they're inspired, or they're, you know, they learn something. So I think everything is based on emotion, and disruption is based on emotion, but it's all like, look at the world around you and see what you can disrupt.
Well, Melissa, thank you for, honestly, it's been a huge honor and a pleasure to spend this time with you. And I know people will get a ton out of this. I know I've gotten a ton out of this. Gave me chills twice in one episode. So you already gave me my opening pitch for why to listen. Thank you for the time, and looking forward to hearing this episode in the wild.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Had a great time.
Thank you for joining us for Marketing People Love. I have been your beloved host, Jacques Spitzer. Please make sure to subscribe, because we have some really exciting episodes coming up from some of the best brands in the game. Before you go, I always want to invite you to take the inspiration you pull from this conversation, especially around disruption, and apply it to your marketing as you create Marketing People Love.